He was married 3 times, but only one of them saw him slowly die. He sat at the same place every night at a table close by. She saw her ex-husband eat by himself. She had been with him through his lies, drinking, and even something worse. It was such a terrible tragedy that Frank Sinatra said it killed Dean Martin years before he actually did. 1987 was a year that changed everything. Jan kept an eye on the man she couldn't save all the time. Dean Martin's life began on the rough streets of Steubenville, Ohio. On June 7, 1917, he was born Dono Paul Crocetti. His parents came to America from Italy. Gaetano, his father, came from Montesavano in 1913 and worked as a barber. The woman he is married to was born in Ohio, but her parents were from northern Italy. It was only Italian at home for Dino. He didn't know how to speak English until he was 5 years old. Music from Italy, the smell of good food, and the struggles of a working-class family during the Great Depression were all a part of his early life. His strong Italian background would one day make his music and style more charming. It was hard for me as a boy, though. Dino had to deal with mean kids when he started school. His Italian accent and poor English were made fun of by other kids at Grant Elementary. He was teased, his words were copied, and sometimes they even made threats against him. Back then, a lot of people looked down on newcomers. He felt like he didn't belong and was hurt. He didn't fight back, though. Instead, he learned how to keep himself safe by being funny and interesting. In the end, these traits helped him win over people. Everyone loved Dean Martin because he was cool and sure of himself after that rough start. Dino got tired of school when he was a teen. He quit school in the 10th grade because he thought he was smarter than the other kids. He wasn't interested in the strict lessons. He wanted to be in the real world more, and his family needed the money. He did dangerous work in steel mills where accidents happened all the time. Besides running illegal liquor and gaming, he also dealt cards and did illegal gambling during and after Prohibition. He was in Steubenville's dangerous underworld when he was only 16 years old. Even though these jobs were dangerous, they taught him how to deal with people, stay alive, and keep his cool. He even tried fighting and called himself Kid. Crochet. As a middleweight, he fought 12 times and joked that he won all but 11 of them. Due to not having enough money for hand wraps, his time in the ring left him with scars, a broken nose, a cut lip, and broken fingers after many years. Comic Lou Coslow paid to fix his nose. Even though the change was small, the surgery made him look like a main man. Dino lived with his friend Sonny King in a small room in New York while he pursued his dreams. They were so poor that they fought with no gloves in their living room. People paid $5 each to see them fight until one of them passed out. They made about $50 a night, which is close to $1,000 today. In order to let the other person finish their food, they even played tricks on other people at the table. The owner saw what was going on and let them both eat for a nickel. When they got rich years later, they each paid him $25,000 back. Dean also worked as a croupier in a casino that was hidden behind a smoke shop. At night, he watched for police raids and spun roulette wheels. He sang in clubs later at night under the name Dino Martini, which came from the name of an opera singer, Nino Martini. But Sammy Watkins, who was his boss, told him he should change his name to Dean Martin. It didn't sound as Italian, which helped him get into show business at a time when having an ethnic name could be a problem. That change made things possible. It was with the Ernie Mackay Orchestra that Dean got his big break. He found his voice there. From Harry Mills and Perry Como, he got ideas for a smooth, easy style that would make him famous. He copied their sound at first, but soon he made it his own. His easy, friendly voice made him stand out and won people over. In 1946, it all began in Atlantic City. Dean Martin sang at the 500 Club. Jerry Lewis was putting on his crazy comedy show. One after the other, they were booked, but one night their solo shows didn't work. The owner was going to fire them. They tried something new because they were stressed out. They jumped on stage together. Martin sang and Lewis kept talking and doing crazy things. Martin replied with a cool, serious laugh. The crowd went crazy. The club was full of laughter. The owner quickly blocked them again. What started as a last-ditch attempt turned out to be a great joke. They hit it off right away. Martin's smooth charm went well with Lewis's crazy energy. Their show became the biggest thing on the East Coast in just a few weeks. A lot of people wanted more, mixing music, slapstick, and quick creativity in a way that no one had done before changed nightclub comedy for good. In 1948, Hollywood picked up the phone. The deal between Martin and Lewis and Hal B. Wallis was signed. Wallis was well known for making Casablanca. The deal wasn't worth much money. It only cost $75,000 for both of them. Freedom was important, though. Wallis let them decide everything about their routines. It was rare. Most of the time, studios kept stars on a short leash. However, Martin and Lewis were free to write and play as they pleased. A lot of people thought this was a bad idea. They were still new to film, but it worked. Their movies had the same crazy sudden spark as their live shows. It didn't matter how little the pay was. In those days, not many stars had artistic freedom and the chance to make their own path. The two worked together on 16 movies from 1949 to 1956. From My Friend Irma to Hollywood or Bust, they did it all. That's more than 2 movies every year. Their movies did really well. They were one of the top 10 movie stars in America by the early 1950s. They were number 1 in 1952. Big names like John Wayne and Bing Crosby didn't sell as many as they did. They were loved by everyone. Their movies had a mix of song, comedy, and quick wit. They also got control of radio and TV. Every theater in the country was full. People who came after Martin and Lewis owe a lot to comedy teams and friend movies. Their run is still one of the most successful in Hollywood history. Things were going wrong behind the scenes, though. Martin thought he was being pushed to the side. Everyone thought Jerry Lewis was the real star. Look magazine put Lewis on the cover by himself in 1954. Their cuts left Martin out. This was a slap in the face for Martin. He wasn't just the good guy, he was also famous. Now, though, it seemed like no one noticed. That cover was the last straw. Things that were getting tense finally came to a head. Martin did not feel seen. They became farther apart. There were cracks in their friendship, which used to make their act stand out. It was all over by 1956. There was one last fight while they were making Hollywood or Bust. Martin told Lewis he was just a dollar sign because he was tired and mad. It was all in that one line. Martin thought he was being used. He thought that their partnership was no longer about art or friendship, but about making money. They didn't talk to each other for 20 years after they broke up. Fans were shocked. The group that made humor what it was had broken up. Both men felt bad about what they did for decades. Their story taught us something, in how fame and wealth can make people fight with each other. What were just words and a dollar sign became a sign of how show business can betray even the best friends and family. Dean Martin's first few years as a solo artist were rough. It was his first movie without Jerry Lewis, and it came out in 1957. It was meant to be the start of something new. Instead, it almost put an end to his career. The cost of making the movie was $1,999,000. It only made $1,905,000 at the theaters. That was a huge loss at the time, nearly $1.2 million. Some critics were harsh. They said the story wasn't very deep and Martin's acting was off. In Hollywood, some people said Martin wouldn't be able to make it on his own. It hurt him a lot to fail. A lot of people at MGM and in the media started to write him off. He didn't want to give up, though. He did something brave in 1958. He gave up a lot of money to be in the Young Lions. He agreed to just $20,000 instead of the $250,000 he was paid for 10,000 flats. Tony Randall was meant to play that part. Even though the studio didn't want Martin, his boss called and made the offer. Martin said he'd do it for free. Marlon Brando and Montgomery Clift were on his side. They wouldn't start filming without Martin. The way he played the part in the movie changed everything. He showed that he was just as good as 2 of Hollywood's best talents. His movie career was saved by that risk, which also showed how deep he was as an actor. Martin's magic had always included music. That's Amor, which came out in 1953, was a big hit for him. This song became a hit and went to number 2 in the US in 1955. Memories Are Made of this sold over 1 million copies and reached number 1. The real surprise, though, came in 1964. A Hard Day's Night was number 1 on the charts, but Martin's Everybody Loves Somebody beat it to the top. That year, he was the only classic pop singer left to get the Beatles out of the American music scene. He made his name with that song, and the words are still written on his gravestone. Martin's big break as an actor came with Rio Bravo. In 1959, John Wayne and him were both in the movie Dude, which was about a drunk cop. Some critics didn't think Martin could play such an important part, but he shocked everyone. He made the man he played fight his problems feel real and raw. It was the biggest Western of that year, with over $10.5 million in ticket sales. Martin and Wayne became friends on and off screen, which added to the power of the movie. This part took away the idea that Martin was only a singer or comedic sidekick. When Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., Joey Bishop, and Peter Lawford got together, it wasn't just another group of musicians getting together. It was the start of something bigger. They changed American culture for good and were known as the Rat Pack. This wasn't just a bunch of artists. The family brought rock, n-roll, fun, and a whole new level of cool to the stage. They did more than just act, they went through it. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, especially when Sinatra was in charge, their friendship became famous. They filled the Sands Hotel with music, laughter, and nights that will never be forgotten. With their wild parties, funny jokes, and charm, they made Las Vegas a dream place to live. People still talk about that time as the golden age of Vegas. When they made Ocean's 11 in 1960, it became one of their most famous trips. Think about this. The movie would be filmed in Las Vegas casinos from midnight to 5 a.m. when there was no one else around. Then they'd go straight to the Sands for night shows that were packed to the brim. The movie was shot in places like Riviera, Flamingo, and the Sands. It didn't matter much about the lines. They used cue cards to keep the party going. It was a big deal when the movie came out on August 3, 1960. There was a new level of work, play, and pure fun. They were more than just singers and artists. They were living out stories that were made up about them. The way they talked was part of what made them magical. There was a lot of gambling and death. Everyday people were Clyde. That was Dolesville, Ohio, not Las Vegas. People from outside their group were left wondering by their slang, which also showed how close they were. Nothing about who they were could stay the same. Some people in the press liked Rat Pack, but Sinatra thought it was better. It was more than just a name. It was a sign of strength, style, and friendship. They were famous in more than one field. They were able to get to know President John F. Kennedy through Peter Lawford, who was married to Patricia Kennedy. They sang the song at the Democratic Convention in 1960. The song about Sinatra's high hopes was used as a campaign song. The Jack Pack helped Kennedy win over America for a short time, but politics has its own rules. In 1962, Robert Kennedy told John F. Kennedy to cut links with Sinatra because he was linked to the mob. They were no longer in politics after that, but they were very powerful for a while. The FBI kept a close eye on everything behind the scenes. There were casinos with ties to the mob where the Rat Pack played, like the Sands in Sahara. It didn't help that Sinatra was friends with guys like Sam Giancana. They were then the subject of wiretaps, files, and probes. Vegas had lots of money, crime, and shows. The Rat Pack was in the middle of it all. This group of people added to the magic and danger of that world. Then TV came along. He agreed to do a comedy show for NBC in 1965. Martin asked for things that couldn't be done to say no. It was his dream to only work 1 day a week, skip practices, and get paid a lot of money. He was shocked when NBC accepted. The Dean Martin Show was born. Martin did not make things hard. He only worked a few hours a week, read from flashcards, and didn't care if he made mistakes. What people saw was what really happened. For 264 episodes, the show was a hit thanks to its fun and ease. NBC even paid $34 million to keep it going. On Thursday nights, Martin was the coolest person in the world. The picture of him drinking was all part of the act. He looked like a fun-loving, drunk playboy on stage. But apple juice, not whiskey, was often in the glass. It was proven by his children. Sinatra made fun of the fact that he spilled more than Martin drank. Martin liked quiet nights at home when he wasn't on stage. The drunk act did exactly what it said it would do. It made people feel calm. Martin's entry was one of the best parts of the show. He would slide down a fireman's pole with a cigarette in his hand once a week, as if nothing could worry him. It was a great way to start an hour of fun where anything could happen. The roast took over after the entertainment show ended in 1974. From 1974 to 1984, a lot of people made sure to watch the Dean Martin celebrity roasts. A lot of famous people came to joke around and with each other. Some of them are Bob Hope, Frank Sinatra, Lucille Ball, and many more. Martin always wore a tux and had a drink in his hand. He told everyone what to do. He made everyone laugh. By reading from cue cards and showed that his cool style never went out of style. He married Elizabeth Ann Betty McDonald in 1941, which was the start of his first marriage. His business was just getting started and they had 4 kids, Craig, Claudia, Gail, and Diana, but life wasn't happy behind closed doors. Betty had a terrible problem with drinking. She often went missing for long periods of time, leaving behind a lot of mental damage. Things going on with Martin were also not a secret. The number of women he was seen with at bars and parties grew. As his fame grew, the marriage got worse and worse. Some people thought Betty drank more because Martin was cheating on her. Some people said Martin cheated on Betty because she drank too much. They were done by 1949. Martin got full control of the kids. And Betty quietly lost sight of the public eye. She died in 1989 in San Francisco, where she had lived her whole life. People never saw this pain. They only saw Martin's easy charm. Martin got married again not long after that. He married Jane Bigger on September 1st, 1949, just a few weeks after split up with his ex-wife. The wedding was very fancy and big. He was best friends with Jerry Lewis, and they were together for 24 years. Jean took care of their 3 kids and Martin's kids from his first marriage as well. They looked like a great family from the outside. It didn't stop Martin, though. The tabloids loved writing about his relationships. Being famous and having a busy job put a lot of stress on him. In the 1960s, Martin's solo business took off after he broke up with Jerry Lewis, but so did the Temptations. The marriage was over by December 1969. In 1973, they got a divorce. John never married again. John was with Martin when their son Dean Paul died in 1987. Though they were no longer married, they stayed close. In his 2005 book, Jerry Lewis said, "John was the best thing that ever happened to Dean next to me." Many people didn't see what he did, John's patience, her loyalty, and her ability to let Martin's mistakes go. That quote showed how complicated Martin's relationships were. There were friendships, broken hearts, and loyalty that went beyond how people saw him. Martin tried getting married again. Kate Hahn, and he got married on April 25, 1973. At the time, the wedding was very fancy and cost up to $100,000. There were 22 boxes of white doves and French lilacs. Catherine used to work in Beverly Hills as a receptionist at a hair shop. All of a sudden, she was a Hollywood star. Martin took Sasha in as his own daughter. Sasha used to be in movies and soap shows. She married Martin and became a Martin family member, but the marriage didn't last. It was over by 1976. Martin's biographers say that his heart was still with Zhang. Some people say it wasn't easy to combine the families. After the split, Catherine stayed out of the public eye. The last time she was seen was at Martin's funeral in 1995. Martin had a lot of problems that made him look cool and charming. When he used to drink as Parr,